Like I showed in the previous video, here you can see I've got my line work on its own layer. I've also arranged my user interface to kind of free up space such that you can see my reference here, although I'm actually working with my reference on a second monitor. But all that means that you can see a large image here because that's what we're focusing on. And this homework assignment is deceptively simple. We have 10 brushstrokes to describe the image. Think you can do that? Describe this photo with all these details and all these different values with 10 strokes. Okay, let's see how it goes. I'm actually going to zoom out because what I want to do is use big brushstrokes whenever possible. And I'm going to think about using overlaps and large areas of value to begin with. So I'm going to pick what looks like the biggest area of value in the whole painting, and that's kind of a, I don't know, we'll say like an 80%. And I'm going to make my brush really big, and my first brush stroke is just going to try and fill that space. And here, it's actually not quite white. I had a touch of color in there, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and just pull that saturation out. Ignore that step. Okay, so I did one brush stroke. I've got 9 left. What is the next biggest division? I think it's probably this difference between the sky and where it touches the water. Because if you notice, the water and the beach are actually kind of the same color. You know, they're almost an indistinguishable value from each other. So I'm going to take a guess then. I'm going to try and look at that edge between the light of the sky and the darker ocean color and try and nail that on this single brush stroke. So I'm going to shrink it down a bit, paint that in. You know, that might have been not quite dark enough, but it's too late now. The next large area of value, I think, is going to be the pier. And the pier is quite a bit darker. So I'm going to make my color quite a bit darker here in the color panel. Shrink my brush size a bit. And I'm going to do my best to lay this in a single stroke. Okay. That is 3 strokes. Moving down the line here, I think the next biggest area is probably that foreground pile of rocks, and they look a little darker. So I'm going to make that color a little darker and do just about like that. Okay, next, probably the boat. I'm going to say the boat's hull is essentially one value. And I think it's maybe a touch lighter than that pile of rocks. I'm going to shrink it down a bit here, and this is going to be stroke 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is number 5. So stroke 5 right here. I'm going to try and get as much of that shape as I can, and I might even, nope, I'm not. I was going to try and get a little bit of that cast shadow, but I think that's a little too ambitious. So looking here and looking at the reference, I have to compare what is the major information that I have in mind, and what am I missing about the kind of essence of what I'm looking at. And at this point, I'm actually going to turn off my lines because those are a little distracting. So I'm going to hide the line layer. And this gives us a pretty clear bit of what we're losing. We're losing any definition between the beach and the water. And as I look at that, it might mean I want to do a kind of a lighter bit where there's that surf or kind of the reflected lighter value. So maybe I'll do that. So stroke number 6, I'm going to do, this is a smaller stroke here to kind of separate these. This could be right here. Oops, not light enough. Okay, I'm going to cheat and make it a little bit lighter just so you can see it. Okay, like that. And stroke 7, I think I need to indicate the cloud. So I'm going to sample the sky color value. I keep saying color. In this case, since we're using black and white, we're working in value only. So I select the value of the sky, and I'm going to move it a little bit higher to catch those top cloud rims. So this is stroke 7. And I'm going to kind of modulate my pressure to get the most out of the stroke. Okay. And now for stroke 8, I think I'm missing the lighthouse, and that's important. The question is, do I want to do the light bit where it is brighter than the sky, or do I want to do the darker bit? I think more than anything it is lighter. So I'm going to keep this I'm going to sample the value of the sky, move it up a bit to make it a bit lighter value. I'm going to carefully paint that in. Now I have 2 strokes left. How do I want to use these? So one candidate would be, if I look at the pier, there's really kind of a light top half and a dark bottom half. So that would be one candidate. It's really big. Another option would be to refine the boat a bit. I'm going to do the pier. So I'm going to sample what's there on the pier. And I think what I painted represents the darker bit. So I'm going to make it a little bit lighter and paint in the lighter bit with stroke 8. Okay. Stroke 9, I want to put in there's a little bit of a river on the beach. So I'm going to sample the value of the beach, make it a little bit darker because the river is darker than the beach. And I'm going to paint that in, kind of modulating pressure to try and get the most out of it. And then I have one more stroke. I think I'm going to try and get a little more detail in on the boat. So I'm going to select the value of the boat, make it a little darker. And I'm going to try and do kind of a long scribbly stroke, starting with the shadow, the bottom of the shadow. So we have a cast shadow that starts here, and this is really just one stroke. It's kind of a contour line. I'm going to try and knock in just some shapes to kind of represent the boat. And oof, starting to get a little finicky there. Sure. Okay. 10 strokes. What I captured in 10 strokes here is not beautiful. Let me center this a little bit here. Clearly, it doesn't have detail. The shapes aren't razor precise. But what it does capture, I'd say, is the essence. And really, there's a reason to this madness. I'm not telling you that, the best paintings in the world are only done with 100 strokes or some sort of artificial rule like that. What I've done here is I forced myself to use stroke efficiency or economy. And what that's done is it's forced me to slow my hand down and to really look at that image. Because if I only have 10 strokes, I have to make each one count. And that means that I have to kind of go through my priority list. I, start with the biggest areas. You saw that my brush strokes were really big at first, and then each successive brush stroke was a little bit smaller. It also meant that because I started with those big essential areas, if I were to say stop after 6 brush strokes, it would have been, pretty much the same image. Each of these brush strokes that I laid down was less important than the previous brush stroke. I was kind of working through this order of hierarchy of importance. So this is exercise number 1. I am not joking when I say you should do 50 of these. I mean, how long did this one take me? 5 or 6 minutes? Find images online, turn them to black and white in the method I showed in the previous video, and give yourself 10 strokes. It'll take longer than your average 10 strokes because, you go into a normal paint and you're doing stroke, 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 you're working really quick. You could do 10 strokes in 5 seconds. What I want you to do is focus on those 10 strokes and make them count. Now, you don't need to do these 50 studies before you progress to the next video, but I do encourage you to take this seriously and give it a try.